Hi Rashidul. We'll wait for 2 more minutes for other people to come and then we'll start.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Rehanul, I was just talking to Rashidul and saying that we'll wait for like 2 more minutes and then we'll start once there are a number of people in the meeting. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to start with the presentation. Uh, yeah, the first question is on your screen, guys, and give it a read and yeah, tell me the answer. Okay, just the background to this question that there are different biomes on Earth, and there is some similarity between what is going on as the latitude changes from equator to pole, and as the altitude changes from 0 meter to the highest mountains. But this is the mountains of the tropical zones. So they have very similar kind of transition. So for example, over here what you can see is like the tropical rainforest and your mixed forest, sorry, temperate deciduous forest and temperate and deciduous forest at your sea level. Then as you increase the altitude, it becomes needle leaf forest, and as you increase the latitude, it becomes needle leaf coniferous or needle leaf forest. Then you, as you go further beyond the tree line, where the tree line is the line where the growth of tree is not possible. So that becomes tundra, and in the alpine tundra in the mountains, and the same thing is tundra in the higher latitudes. Then further than that is the ice cap. So w- I mean, what is this relationship, and how can you quantify this relationship? It's a simple question. I mean, you don't have to think much. It's just, I mean, how do you think the scale of mountains to the change in altitudes and the change in latitude would be? So, yeah. I mean, for example, one latitude. Okay, I have to check. Mm. So, distance between equator to pole is around 10,000 kilometers, and distance between the 0 meter mountain base to the mountains where there are ice caps. Say for example, even Mount Everest is about 8,800, so 9,000 meters. So what? So if you look at the ratio over there, that is 9,000 divided by 10,000 kilometers. That's almost 1:10. No, no, something wrong. 9 kilometers upon 10,000 kilometers. So that's almost 1 is to 10,000. Oh, 1 is to 1,000. One is to 1,000. Can nobody guess it? So, people who have come late, this is the first question, and it's about this model called altitude for latitude temperature model, where if you increase the latitude from 0 to 90 degree, meaning if you go from equator to pole, the kind of changes that you find in the biomes is very similar to the kind of changes that happens when you are climbing a mountain, in a tropical mountain, from the base to the top. Okay. Anybody else? So Raihan will say C, 145 meter to 167 meter. So there's this ratio that I was talking about. So if you go from the lowest point, lowest point, I mean on the earth, something like a 0 meter on the earth, 0 meter sea level, to the highest point on the earth. The highest point on the earth is about 8,800 meters. Yeah, 8868. Yeah, 8,800 meters. That's almost about 9,000 meters. That's equal to 9 kilometers. And distance between pole to equator to the pole is about 10,000 kilometers. So that's a ratio of about 1 is to 1,000. And The option A is the ratio that is about 1 is to 1000, 167 meter to 145 kilometer. That's almost equal to 167 meter to 145,000 meters. That's 1 is to 1000 almost. So the answer is A. I'll just write it down A over here. Okay. So this is from a paper by Jump et al. 2009. What they say is, if you so this is important when it comes to climate change. So how is it important? I mean, okay, people have to speak up over here. What is climate change? Are people talking? Sorry, I can't hear you. What do you understand from? I mean, what do you understand by climate change? I would accept any answer, anything that you say. Rashidul, Raihanul, Aparna, Krish, Bharat Kumar, Rishikesh, and Sneha. That's not just. I mean, okay, that is one definition, but it's happening now. The anthropogenic activities are causing the climate factors to change, but climate change could be anything. But what caused climate change? I mean, what is the major factor that is causing climate change?
Sir,
Anthropogenic activities, yes, but what I mean, what about it? Sorry, yeah, Rishikesh was talking.
sudden change in climate due to any volcanic activity or maybe other.
Okay. So Rehanul also says that carbon dioxide. Can you explain that a bit, Rehanul? Greenhouse effect, yeah. So how does how does that change? I mean, how does that matter? I mean, can you combine them together? Speak up, or I don't know, write it down. Like, what do you're just throwing words at me. Carbon dioxide and greenhouse effect. It doesn't make sense unless it's spoken in a sentence. What do you mean? Rishikesh, you wanna try attempting the definition?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead then.
Sir, climate change uh, is not a means not a always anthropogenic activity.
Hmm.
It's a natural phenomenon.
Yeah.
It previously it happens due to volcanic activity or meteor strike or like that. So in volcano, there it releases various kinds of greenhouse gases, sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, वगैरह वगैरह. Uh, so, but now due to human fossil burning or many carbon emissions, so it is happening now.
Okay. It's okay. So yeah, Rishikesh is. I mean, he's right. So it could be even because of natural causes as well. But currently, what is happening is because of the overuse or over burning of fossil fuels. We are pushing a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is causing greenhouse effect, which is increasing the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere. I mean, so that's like from 1870 the temperature was something else, and now we have come to around 1.5 degrees Celsius increase in the global average global temperature. So I mean 1.5 degree doesn't seem much, but when it's an increase globally, then what happens is um, Earth is getting warmer. That means the equator is warmer now, and the warmth, so that spread of warmth is going towards the pole. As everyone knows, greenhouse effect is actually melting the ice caps as well. So basically the temperature in the poles are also increasing. So what was supposed to be the temperature of the mid latitude is now shifted to the two higher latitudes. Are people getting this point? What was supposed to be the temperature at say 1000 meter is now the temperature at 2000 meters. Say, people getting this point? Yeah. So because of this, I am just asking ki what so um, so there is already a relationship, like there's already a kind of an analogy, not analogy, there's already some kind of a similarity between increase in latitude and increase in altitude. um, at the lowest level you have deciduous forest. As you go up, the deciduous forest converts to needle leaf, but as you go to a higher latitudes, the deciduous forest converts to coniferous forest, which is again a needle leaf forest. Then as you go further up, the tree line comes, and tree line is where beyond which there are no trees. That is where the tundra lies. Similarly, over here in the higher latitudes, the tundra. Everyone knows there's a tundra near the Arctic, and beyond Arctic is ice and snow, and beyond tundra is also ice and snow in the higher latitude. So similarly, so once the temperature increases, for every 1 degree temperature increase, the temperature also starts I mean increasing for the altitude. So basically what was for 1000 meter temperature once long back ago is now a temperature for 2000 meter. So basically at every 1 degree Celsius there's an increase, so that the temperature at this point uh, has shifted at this point after 1 degree Celsius increase. So similarly on the latitude, because the latitude is at a larger scale, so there are like 10,000 kilometers to transverse. So this little change is equivalent to a change of 145 kilometer along the latitude. This is slightly difficult, but this is more easier because the distance is not that much, and most of the habitats are contiguous, so it can happen in mountains. Yeah. So I hope people got it. Do people have doubt? Do people want me to explain again? Yeah. So basically, what I mean is that an animal that is living at 1000 meters, uh, at a 1 degree Celsius temperature increase, would have to move to 1167 meter to get the same temperature that it was having at 1000 meters. Similarly, an animal that was at 0 degree latitude will have to move 145 kilometer towards the pole to get the same temperature if the temperature of the atmosphere increases 1 degree temperature, 1 degree Celsius. So I hope you got it. I'll move to the next question. Okay. Anybody else? I mean, Rehanul says C. Okay. I'll give a brief of the paper. So what this paper says is, although we understand mountains as this conical shaped feature on the earth, where if you go up, the area at each elevation decreases. Are people clear by now? I mean, till now they are clear, right? Conical shape, if we go up the cone, the area that at each elevation or latitude, or sorry, altitude decreases. So if you go to the top, the area becomes zero, but if you go to the bottom, the area is the highest. So if you consider each elevation or altitude as bands, then each band would have different areas. So as you go up, the band, the width decreases, and the band area would also decrease with that. Are people clear till now? Yes or no? I suppose only Rehanul is saying something. I mean, others can say yes or no. Rishikesh, Neha, Bharat, Aparna, Krish, Rashidul, Shubhangi. Can you hear me? Can you guys listen to what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So till now that is the thing, but scientists have recently found, like this is in 2015, they found that it actually doesn't decrease as simply as that. Like if you increase with the altitude, the elevation decreases. In certain kinds of mountains, there are different kinds of, yeah, there are different kinds of changes that happen. So like there's this Rocky Mountain which is in Europe, I think. Rocky Mountains are in America, I forgot. But anyway, so what happens is at the in the Rocky Mountains, the area at the lowest level elevation is low. As you go to the middle elevation, it increases, but as you go to the top elevation, it reduces again. So you can see over here, the lowest elevation is the blue, which is less, but the green is quite expansive. And as you go to the top, like yellow is the highest, it is low again. So that then it forms like a diamond shape. So if you mirror this, it becomes like a diamond shape. Okay, then we have Alps, which basically um, acts like the normal thing that we actually understand, where the area is high at the lowest elevation. Then as you go up slowly, it reduces monotonically. So that means it is becoming a pyramid shape. This like a pyramid that is lying on its back. So that, and then there's an inverse pyramid where this green is the lowest elevation. As you go into the middle elevation, that is yellow. Then as you go higher, then that becomes a deeper red. So green is less, yellow is it increases more than the green, and then as you go up, it increases further, and you'll find that the higher elevations have a greater area in the Kunlun mountain. So that's an inverse pyramid formation. Then we have Himalayas and Western Ghats. Both Himalayas and Western Ghats have this property where the lowest elevation has a little bit higher. Middle elevation doesn't have much area, but as you go up to the top elevation, they have much more area. So they have more like a hourglass shape. If you note how my pointer is moving, you can see the hourglass glass shape over here. So that's the idea behind this paper. So what happens is when climate change happens and the organisms are moving to to a temperature that they are more used to, uh, the movement will vary with the shape of the mountain. I mean, that's obvious, right? So what happens in the case of Himalayas, as I asked, is what would happen? So middle altitude species might get greater areas to shift upslope. So like I said, the middle areas are less. So middle elevation animals, the animals that reside in the middle elevation, once they go up because of climate change, they will actually have greater area to expand to, which is good for them. So so that's the answer. Answer is A. Oh yeah, Diana, thanks. It is in North America. Rocky Mountains are in North America. So the answer is A, and yeah, I hope people got what I wanted to ask. Is everybody okay with the question and answer? I mean, anybody else? Neha, Shubhangi, Bharat, Aparna, Krish, and Rashidul. Yes, Krish is saying yes. Okay. Okay, I hope you're getting to learn something new. That's all I'm trying to. I mean, yeah, I mean, sir is teaching something, but ecology has advanced a lot, and I'm trying to give you as much information as possible in this 1 hour, so that it's that you know that things have advanced a lot beyond your usual ecology classes. So, yeah. Anyway, so the third question is on the screen. So Rehanul says the answer is D. Anybody else wants to attempt? I can explain again. C. Okay. Okay. So before we go to the answer, I'll just explain what interaction means. So there are these four graphs that you see. On the x-axis is the drug dosage. On the y, okay. So on the x-axis, all of them have drug dosage. On the y-axis is the amount of cholesterol lowering. So people are given drug, and then they are tested for how much cholesterol lowers in their body. So when uh, when there is no effect between male and female, the graph should be like this. If you increase the dosage of the drug, the cholesterol also decreases accordingly. So that the graph is very monotonic like that. It increases with the x-axis. So x increases with the y-axis. Are people clear till now? Yeah. Okay. I think Rehanul is the one representing you. Nobody else wants to answer. People can say yes or no if they want me to repeat it, but yeah. Then there could be another case where males and females have been separated as a data, and then you will see that males and females have different levels of increasing or sorry decreasing cholesterol. So if the drug dosages increases, the amount of cholesterol also lowering also increases. Basically amount of cholesterol decreases, but it's different for males and females in the sense that the rate is the same. There is no change in the rate. It's just that the level of cholesterol at initial point was higher, a little higher for males, but from then on it decreases the same. It decreases the same way as the females. It's just that initially males had a little higher cholesterol, or little little lowered cholesterol. Sorry, they should have kept another y-axis not to confuse people. But yeah, So now this is parallel. So still there is no interaction between the drug dosage and the sex of the person. Then there is another diagram over here where drug dosage is there and different sexes have been graphed over here. The males and females have different levels of amount of cholesterol lowering. You can see the males have a steeper slope and the females have a less steep slope. That means for the same amount of increase of drug dosage, um, in males the amount of cholesterol lowering is higher than in females. I hope people got it. This is the opposite, where the females have a steeper slope and the males have a less steep slope. That would mean the opposite. The same amount of drug dosage increase would lead to the different levels of cholesterol lowering. In males, it would be less, and in females would be high. So over here there is an interaction. So the lowering of cholesterol depends on both the drug dosage and the sex of the person. In beginning the upper two graphs there is no interaction because it doesn't matter what is the sex of the person. The drug dosage increases the same way at the same rate, but in this lower two the drug dosage increases, and the rate of y changes with the person being male or female. So that is the interaction that we are talking about. So same way over here, there is climate changing that we all know, and there is a land use change. But what are the effects of biodiversity because of climate change and because of land use change has been studied mostly separately. So people would talk about climate change and how it may affect biodiversity. Like in the previous two questions, we understood that species may want to look for a space higher in the altitude or higher in the latitude where it is much colder than much colder or as cold as what they are used to. Or in the case of land use change, they may look for land which or may they will so like a forest species may look for more forest areas once there the forest that they were inhabiting has been destroyed or decimated. So that is the kind of animal movement that we are talking about. But so they have been talked about in different studies, in isolation, so differently. So now the new studies are talking about interaction between these two. So what happens when climate change is also happening and landscape change is also happening, and there would be some interaction between these two, like we looked at the interaction between sex and drug dosage. The same way there could be an interaction between the climate change and the landscape change, but it can have different effects on different species. Some can have no effect. So basically whatever is increasing because of climate change can reduce because of landscape change. So basically that would mean that there would be no effect on the species. Certain areas it could have a added effect. So whatever increases climate change, with the landscape change it is increasing further, so it can multiply, or it can so it can have an increased range change, or it could have a detrimental effect. So whatever is increasing because of climate change is further sorry whatever is decreasing because of climate change can be further decreased because of landscape change. So that's a decreased range change of species. So all of this is possible based on the different species. There are different kinds of species across the world, and all of these options are possible. So the answer is D. Okay, I hope people understood that. I'll move on to the next question. Yeah. I hope people understood what's a generalist species and a specialist species. So we did talk about pioneer species and climax species, right? A while back. It's very similar to that. A pioneer species is more of a generalist species, and a specialist species is more of a climax species. So just think of in that terms, those terms. So Raihanul, you think that generalist species would be higher in later in the restoration sequence? So when a piece of land reaches its climax, the generalist species would be higher, or specialist species would be higher? Yeah. So abundance of generalist species relative to specialist species will be higher. Basically, in the middle of restoration sequence, early in the restoration sequence, or late in the restoration sequence. Should be early, no? Yeah. Others getting it? Krish, Bharat, Rushikesh, Sneha. Yes. Okay. So generalist species are basically, I mean, it depends on what uh, factor are you taking into account. So generalist species could be a habitat generalist. So basically, it doesn't have a special habitat that they live in. So it could be something like a myna, which can survive very well in a forest, or at least at the edge of the forest, or an open land, or grassland, or agricultural field. Anything, it can survive very well. So those are like general species. Then there are specialist species. So if it's a habitat specialist, that would mean that it can only and only survive in a very dense forest. So for example, your owlet species, the forest owlet, the jungle, the forest owlet species, that is in Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat. They are a very specialist species, and they require a particular habitat to survive. So those are habitat specialists. Then there are diet specialist species, which require very particular diet to survive. Like a generalist species, generally all the urban species that you see, that ranging from squirrels to pigeons to dogs, they are all very they are very diet generalist species. They can eat anything that humans serve them. So or throw at them basically. So but specialist species require very specific kind of a diet. There could be fruit eating, there could be a particular insect that they might be eating. So those are diet specialist species. So what usually happens is a restoration sequence is basically changing from early climax situation to a late climax. So generalist species would mostly be a pioneer species, and specialist species would mostly be a climax species. So early in the sequence, you will find a lot of generalist species that would survive in high, a very extreme kind of a climatic condition. But once the climax happens, there are specialist species that increase in number, and you'll find that they compete more than the general species, and they'll be found in more abundance than the general species. So that is what the whole question was about. So yeah, the answer is B. So fifth question. Okay. So so in humans, I mean, okay, not in humans. So generally in animals, what happens is um, if you have a chick that comes out of the nest, or if you have like animal babies that comes out of the, so there would be there are these territories that these mothers or the parents defend for a while. Now, once the chick grows, becomes an adult, it's I mean it's usual that the adult chick now has to leave out of the territory, because the mother and father, or in some cases like just the mother and father would be uh, yeah, I mean, so basically they will need the territory to further have more babies, but the babies that they had cannot stay in the same territory and they have to be pushed out. So that is what, so that territory is called the natal territory, where usually the animal was born and raised. So your natal house, or basically your native place. In humans it's called the native place. Similarly, that the same as, just a sec, there's somebody at the door, I'll just. Sorry. So yeah, so natal territory is some a territory where I mean basically where you're born and raised. So in mammals, what happens is the natal territory. It's the males that leave the natal territory and go and find out new territories for themselves. But it's in the birds, it's actually the opposite, where the females go out of the territory, the males remain in the territory and breed with other females that come to their territory. It's the females that go out of their go out of their natal territory and find other mates in other territories. So yeah, that is what happens in birds, opposite of what happens in males. So in bears and elephants, it's usually the females that remain in the territory. Even tigers, it's the males that go out. But in birds like flycatchers and all, it's the opposite. So yeah, the answer is A. I hope. Yeah. The second, sixth question. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, Krish and Rehanul both. No, sorry. Krish's answer is for the last question or this question? I forgot. Krish, was it for the last question or this question?
This question, sir.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's straightforward. So allelopathy is basically organisms producing biochemicals that influence the growth and survival of other organisms. So usually it is seen in a lot of plants like Lucina leucophila, which is in Hindi it's called kubabul. Then there are other, like lantana also has some allelopathic effects. So basically that would mean that it does not allow other plants to grow within its vicinity. So what are the other, I mean, factors that may affect? So it may affect the germination of seeds of other plants. It might contribute to success of an invasive species. So like lantana is a very invasive species and allelopathic. It is very successful because of allelopathy. Then the third is it may increase as the phylogenetic distance from each other. So basically, if the plants are more related to each other, then it may have less allelopathic effects on each other. But if the plants are more distant, like of different families or different genus or different families or different, so they'll have more allelopathic effects on each other. So the answer is all of the above. I hope everyone's clear. I'll move to the next question. We have only 15 minutes. Krish says A. Anybody else wants to try? Krish has already said the answer is A. Bharat says B. Difficult to guess. Okay, so theory of island of biogeography is simple. I mean, insular is basically species of islands or whatever related to islands. Island species richness depends on island size and isolation from source region. So I have not mentioned how it depends, like how it varies. So basically, it varies is if the island is large. Yeah, if the island is large, then it would have greater chances of species uh, colonizing it. Is that okay to understand? If the island is large with respect to another island which is small, so which do you think would have greater chances of species colonizing? So basically, species colonizing are just random movements of species from the mainland. So you can understand, yeah. So you can understand the mainland as India and the island as Sri Lanka or Andaman. So something like something can float on a coconut and move from Madras to Port Blair. So something of that sort can happen. That sort can happen, like a crab from mainland to the Port Blair. I mean to Andaman Island. So that is something that is, so if the islands are larger, so there is a greater chance of species colonizing from the mainland to the island. Similarly, if the um, islands are closer, there's a greater chance of species colonizing it rather than if the island is further away from it. That is simple to understand, right? So basically, the answer is A. So if the number of species increases, as the island size increases. So you will understand if I mean, but just by looking at what is happening in Sri Lanka versus what is happening in Andaman, extinction of species increases as the islands get smaller. So okay. Uh, mm, okay. Yes, I understand. Um, Okay, let me get back to you on this. We'll go to the next question. Yeah, the answer can be true. C can be true, but there's a graph that I have not attached over here to the question, which I'll get back to you in the next class. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, eighth question. Yeah, this is very straightforward, but there are different hypotheses or different theories about why tropic regions have more species richness than temperate regions. Some of the major ones are because of the high productivity, because the sun rays are stronger in the tropics than in the temperate, and high productivity would mean more primary productivity, more secondary productivity. I hope people understand by now what's primary and secondary. Primary is the productivity of the plants, and the secondary is whatever eats those plants, and they grow with that. So basically higher productivity because of because of more sunlight. Then A is lack of major extinction processes in tropics. So there have been a lot of extinction processes that has happened in so many years of Earth's history, natural history. Like one of them is the KT extinction, where the just between Jurassic and Cretaceous. Yeah, no, yeah, KT is Cretaceous and Triassic. So that happened with the Jurassic animals because of either meteors or something else. Um so all these major processes were very high in the temperate zone and not in the tropic zone. Then heterogeneous environment, because the environment over here was quite varied. There were chances for species to be to speciate higher in a tropical zone. So the answer is all of the above. Yeah, most of you are right in that sense. I'll move to the next question. Anybody else wants to give it a try? Rayano says C, both A and B. So, like I already said, that the temperature decreases with the altitude, right? So, because the air in the higher altitudes are thinner, so the capacity of the air to retain heat reduces as you go higher in the elevation. So, that's why the same air would have a lower temperature at higher altitudes. So, that is the reason. So, what you see over here in the graph, you see that the temperature reduces with the increasing altitude. The same way, same at the same moment, there was this study. The same study looked at the amount of forest cover. So they found that the forest cover was low in the lower elevation, but as they went to middle elevation, the forest cover was very high. But as they went further high in the higher elevation, the forest cover reduces. So there are basically two reasons for that. At the lower elevation, the amount of forest was low because of more anthropogenic activities. There were cities established, there were roads, there were railway lines. Everything came and reduced the forest cover. That was at the lower elevation. But as they grow, you go higher, after the tree line there are basically no trees, so basically that would mean that after the tree line the climatic conditions are so harsh that you don't find forest beyond like 5000 meters or something. So that's why at middle ranges you have much higher forest ranges, much higher amount of forest than at lower or higher level. So both A and B is the answer. I hope you understood that part. I'll move on to the last question. Krish says D, Rayano says D. Bharat says D. Yeah, the answer is D. So basically, people usually say that non-native species are bad for the environment, blah blah blah. But there have been a lot of studies which actually talk about the beneficial aspects of non-native species. Nothing as beneficial as what the native species would have been, but there are certain beneficial aspects where the native species are not present. So, say for example, at a mountain slope where the native species are not present, you might have non-native species controlling the soil erosion, intercepting the surface water runoff. So basically, increasing water recharge into the mountains. So that's usually conducted or carried out by non-native species like non-native grasses and all. Then major ones are like that native regeneration. So certain climax species of plants can grow in shade, but they are so specific about having shade that they cannot grow in open canopy or where the sunlight is too harsh. So they require shade. So when native regeneration happens in certain places, they usually happen in under a stand of plantation, because that's where the shade is provided, and they grow. And what is important about this is, like, once the overstory, which is the plantation trees, dies, it is taken over by the native species of the forest itself. So basically, that is taken over by the native forest. So that's like kind of a succession that is happening in these plantations. So then there are also food resources to native fauna, like for example, there are species like Solanum mauritiana or even Lantana, which provides a lot of food resources to the native species of the. Um, but sometimes it helps the pioneer species more than specialist species, but that's a different question for a different day. But yeah, non-native species are also helpful they also have some beneficial aspects, and the answer is all of the above. So there was this little story that I wanted to talk about. So basically, there was this species called Veta, which is in New Zealand. This is a native species of New Zealand. It was believed to be extinct for a long time, but it was found again in the 1970s in an isolated patch of gorse. So gorse is the species Ulex europaeus, which is not even native to New Zealand. It's native to actually Europe, England, and other places. So it looks like this: a lot of thorny scrubs, and it is there in Nilgiris. It is there in the Nilgiri mountains, and it usually spreads, and it is very difficult to cross a god space. Even if you are wearing like thick jeans or something, you'll get like major spines on your this thing. So it's very difficult. But what happens is this endangered species was found in this particular like a land, a piece of land where this particular shrub had invaded into. Why was it? Because this species was usually eaten by a lot of rats or hedgehogs or opossums, and because it was living in such a plant, like such thorny plant, they could not reach to it for a very long time. So what happened was the New Zealand's department purchased that land, and initially they said that the cattle won't be allowed to graze in this land. But what happened was and they found that because the cattle was grazing in this land, they provided space for goats to also browse on this plant. So once browsed, they don't fully become like a dense hedge, but they remain at a succession stage where it is appropriate for the vetas to survive. It doesn't grow beyond that, or it doesn't grow less than that. So basically, all this non-native species is actually the reason for this endangered species to survive. That's just an example that I was talking about. Nothing important, but yeah. Okay, this is the end of the session today. Thank you guys for attending. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.